Good afternoon. We are here for the Sanborn Regional School District Policy Meeting. I will call the meeting to order. It is 4:03. If Mr. Ambrose and Tammy can introduce themselves and state where they are and if anyone else is present.
Tammy Mahoney. I'm at home. I have family members around.
I'm Tom Ambrose. I am working from my home office today, and I'm alone in my basement office. Thank you.
John Dutton is present. We are here to, if we can review the minutes from 6/2/21. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh, I think we need roll call when we have remote members, so we have to do a roll call vote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, John,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Tom,
I don't vote, so I'm hi.
Heather, yes. I'm gonna get this, guys, I promise.
I know you.
Oh, it's okay. It just takes a little practice, Heather. You're doing fine.
Used to it.
Review of policies. So we have 3 policies to review today. So the first one is BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
Thank you. The recommended change for BEDH is in letter 2, which would be revised to say that residents of Newton, Kingston, or Fremont may offer comments on agenda items only. It is important to recognize that if an item is not on the agenda, that the public isn't supposed to comment on items that are not on the agenda, and that each person speaking has 3 minutes. We have Tammy had asked me a really great question that I think is worth addressing, which is a unique scenario where if you had a parent that was attending a meeting who was not a resident, so if it could be a divorce situation or any myriad of other situations that occur with families in a complex world where they're not a resident but they wanted to speak because their child attends the school. And I recommend that in that instance, which would be very rare but possible, that that the board could make a vote to allow that person to speak, and that would be appropriate. So I would recommend the language as proposed, that we change it from members of the public to residents of Newton, Kingston, or Fremont.
Other questions or concerns? Tammy?
I mean, my concern is just that I don't want people to read this policy and feel, sort of misinterpret that if you take it literally, because generally we employ the policies on a fairly literal basis, that they need to be residents of those 3 towns. There are stakeholders that aren't necessarily residents that I would still consider stakeholders.
Could make language for to state that the board can make an exception and change as needed.
I don't think you have to do that because that's a matter of law. I don't recommend that. I think that the board has the authority at any time to waive a policy, which I don't think we should make a habit of. I guess we could say that, so the thing I thought of, Tammy, I thought about this a lot. So the one time I thought was, so for example, when Eric Chinberg came to speak, right? Like he's a stakeholder who's looking at but he was on the agenda in a part of the presentation. In 6 years of working in the central office, I've never had a time where someone who wasn't a resident showed up and demanded to speak at public comment. I've never had it happen. But in light of recent events, I'm more concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that when we were debating the athletics, the winter athletics and basketball, that when there were a number of girls and their parents to speak about the girls basketball team, I think there were some other athletes as well. I do believe there were some coaches that spoke that were not probably technically residents.
Should we say residents or employees?
I think we might want to make an exception for staff.
That's a
That
great
to me would
idea.
make sense.
Yep, I think that's a really great idea, and I'm perfectly fine with that if the rest of the committee is.
I agree. I think that's a great idea, Tammy, because you're right. A lot of our staff do not reside in the Sanborn district.
Right,
Yep,
right.
yep.
But I would want to hear what they would have to say.
Are there any other stakeholders that you can think of? I thought the split family one was reasonable. I just haven't seen it happen before. So we could say
I can't think of
employees.
any others.
So we could add residents of Fremont, Newton, Kingston, employees, or parents.
Yeah.
Totally reasonable. I mean, this is up for discussion, right? I'm just throwing out that I just want everyone to remember that if anyone needs to speak and the board felt like they had a legitimate reason to speak, that we would have the ability to vote to waive that.
I think
You know?
employee insurance covers Tammy's concern, which I think her concerns were valid because, you know, a lot of our parents don't all live in the district because of, you know, blended families, separated families. And a lot of our employees are not members of the district. So I think if we blanket employees and or parents of the district, I think that would cover the two areas of stakeholders that we would
Mhm.
to be giving public comment.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
think it's SRSD, please, and parents,
Yeah.
to clarify.
That's fine with me.
Works for me.
Great.
So we can have those changes made, and then would we like to make a motion for a first and second read at the meeting tomorrow evening?
Yes, that's what's on the agenda. Yeah.
I move to accept, or I move to recommend to the board a first and second read of policy BEDH with the amendments as noted.
Second,
Thank you. All in favor, John?
Yes.
Tammy?
yes.
Beck? Yes. Thank you.
Great.
The second policy, EB, agenda preparation and dissemination.
Dissemination.
Thank you.
Dissemination, sorry, not decimation.
It could be decimation depending on the agenda, but no, I think this is good. Will Phillips caught this, and he just said that in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that requests to address the board on matters not on the agenda must be presented to the superintendent. It must set forth the specifics of the subject to be addressed. And then he added the language, when appropriate, the board may place such requests on the agenda. And he suggested changing the bolded language to decisions to include on the agenda items suggested by staff members, students, or citizens shall be made consistent with board policy BEDB. So we could either change the bolded language to when appropriate, the board may place such requests on the agenda. I would recommend and agree with Will that the second option of changing it to decisions to include on the agenda items suggested by staff members, students, or citizens shall be made consistent with board policy BEDB. So that's what I'm recommending to you to add on BEDB.
And should we highlight the citizens based on BEDH? Citizens of the Sanborn district employee, like, do we need those to be connected? That's more of my-
Yeah, I think that would be perfectly fine. You mean the paragraph above where it says any board member, staff member, student, or citizen of the district? I think we're good because it's already there.
Okay,
It's right up above in the paragraph above. Part of this whole thing, it really was good because we figured out an incongruency in our policies anyway.
Okay.
So this all worked really well. This is good policy work.
any questions or feedback?
No, works for me.
Yeah, I think Will's wording is good.
We would need a motion to amend for the wording.
So I'll make a motion to amend the language in paragraph 5 from when appropriate, the board may place such request on the agenda, to decisions to include on the agenda items suggested by staff members, students, or citizens shall be made consistent with board policy BEDB.
Second,
Roll call, John,
Yes.
Tammy?
yes.
Yes. And would we like to make a motion to present this to the school board for agenda preparation and dissemination? I'm blanking if it's one read or two tomorrow.
2.
Okay, all right, so for first and second read on the August 18th school board meeting.
And so moved. Amy, will
I
you
would think that that could be part of the motion that we just did, but
Yes, we should amend the emotion. Amend the motion, not the emotion.
to my original motion and add that we bring this to the board for a first and second read.
whatever the proper protocol is to change my second to agree with that, I'm fine with that.
Thank
Not
you.
sure there's some proper way to do that, but
All in favor, John?
Yes.
yes.
Or yes? Okay, thank you.
All right. So may I move to policy IF and give you a brief update? Thank you. I'm working on this policy with our attorney, and there is some more work to be done, so I'm asking that that be moved to our next agenda.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Is this a new policy?
No,
Okay.
no, what I'm doing is essentially, I think you all saw the letter that I wrote regarding critical race theory and the teaching of white shaming and all of these very, very complicated and very important topics that we need to talk about. I'd like to do a little more homework before making a recommendation for IF, but it does need to be, I want to talk to our attorney about, we may end up just crafting a policy about the actual topic, a different policy. And I'm just not sure yet if it's better to amend this policy or develop a policy that clearly defines, and I just want to be, I could not be more clear about this. Shaming of anyone based on their race, religion, sex, orientation will not be tolerated at Sanborn. And honestly, I'd like it in writing in the most effective way possible. Right? You shouldn't be ashamed regardless of your culture. And that is very, very important to me as a human being and a leader, that everyone feels safe at our schools. And people who make other people feel unsafe will be having a very unpleasant conversation with me or one of my administrators. We're not going to tolerate that. So the question is, what do we do to most effectively to put that into policy in addition to the bullying and sexual harassment type policies, right? Like how clear can we make it? And part of it is instructional in nature. How do we help teachers to have the conversation with kids so that kids feel safe but don't cross a line? I need to do some more work, and it may not even be ready for the next meeting because I want it done right and once. So I'm working really hard on it. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other future agenda items?
Yeah, I'm working with Phyllis on some other policies. I'll be in touch, Heather, right away. We talked about it last week, and we plan to catch up. I think we're going to have a pretty... my stance is we're going back, well, as close to back to normal as we can. So we have some policy work to do, and some of it I'm really looking forward to, and some of it's going to be hard. The G policies will definitely have to be reviewed this year, and we're going to have to start tackling the I policies, which is going to be a pretty intense conversation. The ISA committee will link into the I policies, the finance committee. There's so many different pieces that instruction touches that I just want to be very mindful and do this right the first time, because I do not feel that our policies are congruent with our practices in some areas. And I don't feel that the policies really reflect where we are as especially post COVID with all the possibilities of remote learning and different things that can happen. So there's a lot to do. Brian Stack's doing some great work at the high school in about a week, meeting with staff, asking, my essential questions, what's working, what's not working, and What can we do differently? And our administrative team retreat touched on a lot of these things at length. I have to tell you, like, our administrative team retreat was it felt so good to talk about teaching and learning for 2 full days. And then the minute we brought up the reopening plan, it all went right back into like, well, what are we going to do about lunch? And what are we going to do about band? And it's really hard because we want to talk about kids and helping them to learn. And it was just great to talk about it for 2 days. I'll give you a more detailed update at the ISA meeting.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Any, Dawn or Tammy?
Is our next meeting on September 1st
Yes, September 1st at 5 o'clock.
at 5? Okay. Thank you.
All right.
So we will adjourn at 4:19. Thank you.